So let's jump back in. Next week, by the way, we'll be meeting and learning in person. Also on Zoom, we'll have a Zoom option also, but we'll be there. We're going to have a special class on the topic of the power of tefillin in honor of Yosef putting on tefillin for his first time on Sunday. Okay, let me see what we left off. Yeah. So we were talking a lot last week about what I told you my Rabbi Milk Weinberg used to refer to as counterfeit pleasures. Counterfeit pleasures, the ones that masquerade as real pleasures, the ones that will exist in order to carry you away from your purpose in life. Hannah, the soldier that was wounded, is Harav Aaron Yehuda ben Tova. We spoke about counterfeit pleasures and how really we have to first define for ourselves what our true goal is in life. And depending upon how we answer that, and if our goal is comfort and ease, then we're going to choose a certain brand of pleasure. And if our goal and purpose in life is growth and connection, then we're going to tend towards a different type of pleasure. So that was kind of the main focus from last week. We are on the top of page 27, is where we're going to pick up. Okay, so let's see what the Ramchal has to say, continuing on this topic. I'm just going to read a little bit here, and then we'll discuss it. He says, "V'hinei samo kadosh baruch hu la'adam b'makom sherabim bo marchikim oso mimenu yisparach." That the Holy One, blessed be He, has placed man, set man in a place where there are many factors that can distance man from Him, blessed be He. Okay, that He put us in a world where there are built into the world that Hashem put us in are what the Ramchal refers to as marchikim, things that are marchik us, they distance us. If in Hebrew, if you want to say something is far, it's rachok. Okay, so marchikim are things that create distance between us and Hashem, blessed be He. And what are those? V'heim heim atavos hachamiyos. Those are physical desires that are ever present in this world. So let's take a pause here and discuss what exactly the Ramchal is teaching us over here. Okay, so what the Ramchal is telling us is that basically Hashem created us and put us in a world where the mitzvahs are there. The mitzvahs are available everywhere. They're all around us. They're accessible, and we can access them. We can choose to connect to them. We can use them as a vehicle for our growth. But they're going to be hard. They're not going to be easy. It's not going to be like, playing canasta. No offense. But it's not going to be something, and not that playing canasta is so easy, but it's not going to be something that's just going to be pure joy. Okay? It's going to be hard. They're going to be difficult. They're going to be challenging. And they're going to require great effort and real toil in order to be able to tap into them and to use them and to access them. And there are so many barriers and challenges that are always going to abound that are going to be there to block our access to these mitzvahs. Right? The mitzvahs are the vehicle. The mitzvahs are what's going to create what we call devekus, the connection, that deep connection between us and Hashem. But in order for there to be an opportunity for us to grow and for us to exercise our free will, it has to be that those mitzvahs they're going to be barriers, they're going to be walls, they're going to be things that are going to be preventing us, that are going to be there to block access for us to these mitzvahs at all the time. These are called the Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto refers to these as the marchikim, the things that are planted into the system that are designed to make it hard, designed to create challenge, and to present us with a choice. so that when we ultimately choose kirvas Elokim, closeness to God, the vekus, connection with God, it's a result of our choice, and it matters, and it's real, and it's us, because we had to fight for it. Anything you have to fight for in life is yours. But if you don't have to fight for it, it's not yours. It's just there. Okay? So what are those marchikim? What are those distancers? So he says these are specifically the physical desires that are ever present in the world. Our physical desires, our desire for physical pleasure that never ever seems to go away. It's always there. It's always powerful. They're rooted in the body. They're connected to the goof, the body, and they're the what we call the lower level pleasures, and they're there to challenge us, to make it hard, and to provide challenge and friction and tension. Okay. Now, our goal in all of Judaism is not to avoid physical pleasure. That's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to avoid physical pleasure. We're not a religion that believes in, some form of deprivation of physical pleasure. We certainly, anyone who's ever experienced a beautiful Shabbos knows that Judaism is about anything but depriving ourselves of physical pleasure. We eat, we drink, we celebrate, we spend time with friends, we engage in intimacy, marital intimacy on Shabbos. It's all about pleasure. But what we try to do with sexuality, with food, with all of the taivas, with all the physical pleasures that are available to us, is that we try to elevate them. We try to take that drive that we have to feel something that feels good, to feel that pleasure, and we try to channel it into our service of Hashem. So like we always say, before we eat something, we make a bracha. And by doing so, we recognize Hashem as the source of this pleasure that we're about to engage in. Okay. But if we make the mistake of allowing our taiva, our physical pleasure, our need, our yearning, our desire built into us, physical pleasure, to take over our lives and to rule over us, instead of for us to be able to control them, then ultimately what they do is they take us away from our true purpose in life, which is kirvas Elokim, closeness to God, as the Ramchal told us, quoting King David in Psalms, closeness to Hashem. Kirvas Elokim li tov, closeness to God, that for me is good. So these pleasures that are designed to take us away and to provide us with that challenge in our lives, they're going to feel good for a while. They're going to feel good. They're going to taste good. They're going to smell good. But ultimately, if we allow them to take over our lives, we sell out our lives. We sell out a life of meaning and purpose for, to borrow a phrase from last week's Parsha, a couple of weeks ago, for a bowl of lentils, right? A bowl of beans, like Esav did when he sold his birthright to Yaakov for the pleasure of eating a bowl of beans. So that's what the Ramchal is telling us to keep in mind. That spirituality and physicality are really two opposites. And ultimately, they're inversely connected and related. You can't have both in life as your goal. You have to choose. You have to choose. What's your goal? In my life, what's my goal? Physical pleasure, right? Chumrius, as we say, the physical enjoyments of life. Is that my goal? That's fine. If that's my goal in life, go for it. Go for it. Have it and enjoy it. It's everywhere. It's totally available. But maybe my goal is kirvas Elokim. Maybe my goal is closeness to Hashem. And if that's the case, I have to identify that as my goal, what I'm trying to get and achieve and accomplish in life. It doesn't mean I can't have pleasure. It just means I have to have the right types of pleasures at the right times, in the right way, with the right people, under the right set of circumstances. Okay? So that's what the Ramchal is saying over here. Now, what he says next is kind of amazing and a little bit depressing, but at the same time, actually, not yet. First, he says that these before that part, he says that these marchikim, these things that distance us from Hashem, they're specifically the desires that are physical desires that are everywhere in the world, whose nature is such that if someone becomes drawn after them, he will become steadily more distant from the true good, which we explained before as bonding with Hashem. Okay, that sentence went with the previous part. Okay, so now here's the part that I wanted to focus on now. It emerges then, the nimtza shehu musam be'emes b'toch hamilchama hachazaka. It emerges that man has truly been placed in the middle of the most intense battle. In Hebrew, he uses the word milchama. You know what a milchama is? A war. A war.
Can I answer
Now,
this?
just to remind you, the Vilna Gaon. What's that? I didn't hear. Okay. I want to remind you that the Vilna Gaon said that there's not a word, not one word in the first 10 chapters, at least, of this book that is not absolutely precise. So if the Ramchal says that we are placed in the middle of an intense war, a battle is the translation over here, but really war is the more accurate translation, he means it. He means it. We are at war. We are at war. Okay, now what does this mean? According to Jewish understanding, Jewish philosophy, there's no way around it. Life is a war. Life is a battle. It's a war. And one thing you know about a war, when you're fighting a war, you can't stop. You don't stop. You don't put your guard down for a minute. You can't stop fighting. What happens if you stop fighting? The enemy starts conquering, marching down the battlefield, taking over more and more territory, right? So this war that we fight, this internal war that we're fighting between being drawn after the physical pleasures of life, which are so pleasurable, It used to be back in the day that, if you were kosher, like there wasn't that much available to you. Now, forget about it. There's nothing. I mean, it's especially when you live in Israel and there are 5,000 kosher restaurants in Jerusalem. Everything is here. All the pleasures are everywhere around you. And you have to decide. And it's not like you can say, okay, you know what? I'm going to be a spiritual guy. I'm going to go for spirituality over physicality. I chose. No, it's a choice that you make every second. It doesn't stop. It never eases up. I remember once I was having a personal challenge with a certain physical drive that I couldn't control, a taiva, something that was just a physical pleasure that I couldn't not pursue. It was so hard, and I was struggling with it. So I figured I would go. I knew this Jew who learned in the base medrash in the study hall where I was studying. He had to be 90, in his late 90s. So I figured I'd go ask him, when does this ease up, this particular challenge? When does this get easy? When does it, at what point does it stop, being difficult? And he said, I don't know. I'll let you know when I get there. Okay. Okay. So clearly, when does this war end? It ends the last day of your life. It never gets easy. The challenge, the battle, the struggle between the physical and the spiritual, my body and my soul, what I really want and what I feel like having, it never stops. It doesn't stop. It's there forever. It's a war, an ongoing war. And we have to be ready to fight. And we have to be on guard and prepared for battle. And that's what the Ramchal is telling us over here. Life is a war. It's a war between the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer HaTov. That positive, godly, holy side of me that wants nothing other than connection to Hashem, and that physical, lower side of me that wants nothing but cheap pleasures that feel good, counterfeit pleasures. And that is life. And, knowing that obviously is a huge thing. I wanted to,
David?
Yeah, Jeff.
Does he go into that the Yetzer Hara gets stronger as we get stronger, so that
there's always a choice? Is that a concept that he proposes, or is that from somewhere else?
He doesn't talk about, he doesn't specifically mention that, but that's a Gemara. That's a statement from the Talmud. So it's like universally agreed upon. But he actually doesn't delve into that particular issue in this book. But what I wanted to say is, and in the past we've discussed this. There was a great rabbi who we've talked about a lot over the years. His name was Rabbi Destler, Rabbi Eliyahu Destler, and he was from the yeshiva in Kelm, and then he moved to Western Europe. He lived in England during the war. Eventually, he started the Gateshead Kollel, and eventually he came to Israel. And he was the mashgiach in the Panovich Yeshiva in Bnei Brak, and in one of his classic essays. He wrote many essays. It's collected in several volumes called The Strive for Truth, or Miktav Eliyahu. He talks about free will, and he gives us this incredible image, which once you hear it, I'm sure you've heard it before, you remember it. And if you haven't heard it, you will remember it because it's so vivid and so clear. He talks about the free will battle, this war that we're discussing. He talks about it like in a battlefield, in olden day battlefield, not like technological warfare like the way they fight wars now, but in the olden days when there was a battle, and the battle would take place on a battlefield, and there would be a front line, and there'd be two enemies, combatants, warring enemies, and they would fight, and they would fight one day, and depending upon how the fighting worked out, the front line would either push a little bit forward into the enemy's territory, or it would move a little bit backwards into previously conquered territory. And there was this fluid front line that was always moving and always adjusting a little bit further, a little bit further back. And winning the war meant that you over time were slowly, gradually pushing the front line a little bit. Maybe one day it pushed back a little bit, but ultimately you're moving the front line further and further and further ahead. That is the imagery that he gives. And he says that all of us are fighting a war, but where are we fighting the war? We're only fighting the war on that one battle line, on that one front line. And what is that front line? That front line is going to be different for everybody, and it's going to be different for each of us throughout different times in our lives. But it's that moment, that point where these two forces, the force of illusion and the force of reality, the force of spiritual and the force of physical, are meeting each other perfectly right on that line with equal pull. One is pulling me this hard and the other one is pulling me equally hard. And they're both at me, grabbing at me, pulling at me. That's where I'm fighting my war. And if I overcome this particular battle, then what happens? That battle is now in conquered territory. I'm no longer fighting there. Now I'm fighting a new battle. And that's called the point of free will that Rav Destler describes. So, you're not fighting your battles everywhere. There are things which are so elevated or so high or so refined that they're way, way, way beyond where you're fighting right now. They're deep into enemy territory. So, for example, right? Let's say that is anyone struggling with or fighting with the battle that every single word that they say in their davening should be with perfect and total kavana and intention and focus, right? Or is anybody fighting a battle that not one word of lashon hara should ever leave their lips ever? Right? We're not fighting those battles because those battles are deep into enemy territory. Okay. Now, is anyone fighting a battle right now whether you should, go outside and ram your car into your neighbor's mailbox because you don't like the way he parks on the street? Okay. You're not fighting that battle either, hopefully, right? Why? Because those kind of battles are so deep into conquered territory that you're no longer fighting that battle either. Okay, right? Everyone's at a different place. I don't fight a battle whether I should turn my phone on or not on Shabbos. It never, ever, ever crosses my mind, ever. I don't fight that battle at all. I fought that battle a long time ago. Actually, I never fought that battle because by the time phones came out, I was already totally religious. But I fought battles about Shabbos a lot earlier on. But you know where I do fight a battle? when Shabbos is over and I haven't made Havdalah yet, but Shabbos is over, do I turn my phone on or do I wait until I make Havdalah and then turn my phone on? So you're always fighting at some point. That's the war of life. And that's what Destler says, that it's a fluid battlefield. The front line is fluid, and you can conquer, and then you can make a negative choice or a bad choice, and then you can make another bad choice, and then you can lose territory, and things that were not ever a battle or were a battle a long time ago can all of a sudden become a battle again because you lost ground, you lost territory. Or you can move forward, and things that weren't a battle before because they were so high and above your pay grade can suddenly become where you're fighting now because you've worked your way up to that. And that's how life works. It's a battlefield, and it's constantly moving backwards and forwards. And the goal is to be pushing forward. There'll be setbacks, but for the most part, you're moving forward in your own battle in life. That's how Destler describes it. Okay, so let's take a look at the next line over here. So just to repeat that, it emerges then that man has truly been placed in the middle of the most intense battle for all the circumstances of the world, whether favorable or adverse. Heina, heim, nisyonos la'adam. They are in reality tests for a person to overcome. Okay. This is a fascinating point that the Ramchal is making over here. He's saying that every single thing in life is a test or a challenge to see who we are. Everything is a challenge, everything is a test. Now, what's the purpose of a test, a challenge in Judaism from a Jewish point of view? Why does Hashem test us? He doesn't know what we're made of. He doesn't know what we can achieve. He doesn't know, he doesn't know whether we're going to pass or not. He wants to see what we know, who we are.
For our benefit.
Okay, for our benefit. How
Right,
so?
right.
How's it for our benefit? How so?
It's for our benefit because it shows us that we're stronger than we might think, and that we can ascend higher.
Okay, great. I think somebody might have two devices. Okay, so good. So Jeffrey's saying right. So it allows us to ascend higher. That's that image that you use of ascending is actually perfect because in Hebrew the word for test is nisayon. Nisayon is a test, and it's comprised of a smaller word which is nun samech, which is nes, which means miracle, but it also means a flag that you raise up the flag every morning, right? So a nisayon, a test, is something that's intended to lift us up, to elevate us, or as I like to say, it's a mechanism that's used to convert potential into actualized self-actualization. Okay, so he says over here something which is really interesting, and at first glance it sounds a little bit challenging. He says everything is a test, right? Remember, no extra words, no non-precise words. Everything is a test, which means both the good things in life as well as the bad things in life. So I understand how the bad things in life, the bad things can be a test, right? An illness, God forbid, a divorce, financial struggles. Those are real tests in life where the person has to dig deep inside of themselves and to find that strength to be able to carry on or to rebuild or to move forward. That makes sense to me. That makes perfect sense. I would absolutely call that a test. But how are the good things in life a test? I'm being tested with having perfect health. I'm being tested by having a wonderful, perfect, beautiful marriage with wonderful children who only provide me with nachas 24/7. I'm being tested with having total financial success and no worries whatsoever. Where's the test? I understand how the bad things are a test, but where's the test here? What part of my character is being developed? How do I need to dig deep inside of myself to find the strength and to carry on and to rebuild from perfect health, from great financial success, from a wonderful, perfect family?
Is this even possible?
It is impossible. but there are good things, right? You can have good things in life, right? That, or at least for periods of time. So those are also a test. How is that? How are the challenges? And how are the challenges? Guys, somebody has two devices on. Somebody might get feedback on it. Okay. So what part of my character is being tested or challenged through these quote unquote tests, the tests of comfort and success and ease, right? I don't see how that's exactly challenged. Yeah, so I'm going to open that one up.
Here's a thought that as we progress, as we grow, our capacity, our potential grows as well. So as we are given more means, it's incumbent on us to actualize that greater potential so that, for example, we get a new job and it pays us a lot more money. Well, what are you going to do with that increased potential, that income? So I think there's always a challenge. And I'm also thinking, I'm also thinking that this ties in so beautifully with the concept of God being a giver, because pleasure can come only when there's a sense of accomplishment. And accomplishment means challenge, means obstacles. So it kind of fits together.
Yep, definitely. It definitely does. And I just think that, and I just want to just comment on the first thing that you said, which is that I think that's a very, very good insight, which is that when there's more abundance or when there's more blessing in your life, the wonderful, wonderful thing, but it also, like you said, that means that God demands more from you, expects more from you, there's more that you can achieve and accomplish. So in a sense, it is a test. It's a test. My mom wrote here to live with gratitude and humility, which of course, that's a huge part of it, right? If you're living with gratitude, are you, yes, everything is wonderful. You have wonderful things in your life, but are you telling Hashem on a regular basis how appreciative and how grateful you are that he's blessing you in this way? Are you expressing your gratitude, or are you taking it for granted, right? Are you living with humility, or do you allow your sense of, look what I've achieved and look what I've accomplished, look how Hashem has blessed me in my life, to, God forbid, lead to arrogance? One of my favorite types of people in the world are, I met somebody like this in Shabbos, are people who have, according to normal social, rules, have every reason in the world to be totally arrogant, and yet they're completely humble and don't hold of themselves as being anything special. I love people like that. Unfortunately, I know a lot of people, I don't know too many people like that. I know a lot of people the other way that don't have a lot to be arrogant about, but they walk around thinking that somehow they're so much better than everybody else. But when you meet somebody who could easily and rightfully so be arrogant or haughty, and yet they're just so humble and so they don't think they're better than anybody else, those are wonderful. Those are the kind of people I like to hang out with. Yeah, so he carries on. Let's just see what he says. He gives two examples.
Rabbi, I want to say something. It's understandable, if you're a person that's blessed with wealth and whatever, you can see the connection. But for example, what happens if you're a person that's blessed with good health, like you said? Besides recognizing that, what is the wonderful lesson to be learned from that? How do you share it or not share it? Or, it's like, like when people find religion and they know it's the right way and they want to push it through, that everybody should copy them. So it's the same thing, more or less, let's say, with good health. You want to tell everybody how to live, what to do, blah, blah, blah. And of course, that's not the right way to go. But
no, but
what is the lesson there?
But if you have, if a person's in good health, then then you could take advantage of your good health to be able to be active and to help other people and to be able to do mitzvahs and and be there for people that need physical help in different ways, and there's a lot of things that you can do, just to be grateful, just to have gratitude.
Of course,
of course. So many people have so many health issues, and and if you don't, or if you have, relatively speaking, less significant, less severe health issues than other people, then that's something that you just have to be incredibly grateful for. And as long as you're healthy and able-bodied and you can do mitzvahs and help people, you've got to do that. You got to take advantage of that.
Mhm.
So here he gives a couple of examples. He says everything is a test. Everything in the world is a test for a person to overcome. There's poverty on one side and wealth on the other side. Both of these can pose challenges to a person. In the manner that Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, stated. What did King Solomon say in Mishlei? He said, "Give me neither poverty nor wealth, but allot my daily bread, lest I be sated," meaning lest I become wealthy and have more than I need, "and I deny you, saying, 'Who is Hashem?' and lest I become impoverished and steal and take the name of my God in vain, in a vain oath of innocence." Okay, so he's basically saying that we certainly understand how poverty can be a test in life, right? God forbid we shouldn't know in poverty, but we can certainly see how that can be a big challenge for somebody to have to live with poverty and to suffer in that way, right? So that's clear. But the bigger question is, how is looking for something while we're speaking over here. How is wealth? What is the challenge of wealth? So let me show you a very important and classic little bit of text from the Torah that I want to share with you. I'm going to share my screen here for a minute. Oh, you know what? Actually, Julie, can you make me a host, but will it stop recording if you make me a host? No. Okay. So this is coming straight out of Deuteronomy chapter 8. Deuteronomy chapter 8. And I want to read from here from verse 7. Okay. I'll show you where I'm reading from. From right here. Okay. Okay. I don't know what that was, but okay. For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land. God is speaking to Moses over here. Moses is speaking to the Jewish people over here before they enter into the land of Israel for the first time. For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land with streams and springs and fountains issuing from the plain and hill, a land of wheat and barley, a land of wheat and barley, of vines and figs and pomegranates, a land of olive trees and honey. Those are the 7 species, the famous 7 species of the land of Israel is blessed with, right? I mean, you cannot believe how many olive trees there are in Israel. We have so many olive trees in our neighborhood that it becomes annoying that everywhere you go, you're stepping on olives. We have an huge olive tree in our backyard. It's crazy. So we have this wonderful land. You're about to enter into this wonderful land, a land where you may eat food without stint, where you will lack nothing, a land whose rocks are iron, and from the hills you can mine copper. Now, when you have eaten your fill, give thanks to the Lord your God for the good land which he gives you. That quote right there is that is, you might find that familiar because that's part of the benching. You say that in the Birkat HaMazon. This is the source in the Torah for the obligation to say the Birkat HaMazon. This verse right here, you will eat and you will be satiated, and give thanks to Hashem your Lord for the good which he has given you. Okay. Now here's the flip side. Take care lest you forget the Lord your God and fail to keep his commandments, his rules, and his laws, which I enjoin upon you today. When you have eaten your fill and you have built fine houses, batim tovim. You've built fine houses to dwell in, and your herds and flocks have multiplied, and your silver and gold have increased. You're living on the North Shore, baby. You know, you've made it. You got everything you want. You got beautiful home. You got nice cars. You got 3-car garage. You're there, and everything you own has prospered. Beware, lest your heart grow haughty and you forget the Lord your God, who freed you from the land of Egypt, the house of bondage, who led you through the great and terrible wilderness with its seraph serpents and scorpions, a parched land with no water, who brought forth water from you from the flinty rock, who fed you in the wilderness with manna, which your forefathers had not known. Okay, now keep going. In order lest you do that, and you say to yourselves, now here's the biggest pitfall ever in this area. And lest you say to yourselves, Kochi ve'otzim yodi soli as a chayil hazeh, my own power and the might of my own hand have won this wealth for me. Remember that it is the Lord your God who gives the power to get wealth in fulfillment of the covenant that he made with you and your forefathers, as is still the case. If you do not forget the Lord your God and follow, if you do forget the Lord your God and follow other gods and bow down to them, I warn you this day that you shall certainly perish, etc., etc., etc. So what's the power? What's the pitfall? What's the risk? What's the danger of wealth, success, and power? It's this right here. It's Kochi ve'otzim yadi. It's lest you say to yourself, my own power and the might of my own hands have won this wealth for me. Okay, so that's what the Ramchal is telling us over here. The risk involved with the challenge, the test of wealth. The test of wealth is not to fall into the pitfall of that terrible temptation for a person to say, Kochi v'otzim yadi, it's me. Look what I did. Look what I achieved. Look what I accomplished. And to push Hashem completely out of the picture.
David?
Yeah.
There's a problem here. The book of Job just makes that all problematical, because Job was blessed and terrible things happened to him, and all of Job's friends sort of parroted what the Ramchal said. You must have sinned somewhere, otherwise this would not have happened. And it turned out that he didn't. And Hashem basically is trying to explain it's a lot more complicated than you think, and disappears in a whirlwind, and the question is never answered.
I don't know why that creates a contradiction over there. The Ramchal is not saying this is the only reason ever that bad things will ever happen to you.
No,
He's
but
saying that one of the dangers of life.
Yeah, but Job's friends assume that if he had everything just like you said, and then he lost it all, then it must be his fault. In other words, it's just a corollary. In other words, if you forget where your blessings are from and you don't follow the mitzvot and you get haughty, which Hashem hates, you're at the risk of losing all of that. Well, Job lost all of that. Job lost it, so the friends just assumed that he must have been doing something wrong, and it turns out that Hashem never answers. But he doesn't say, he doesn't say, oh yeah, you screwed up here, here, and here. Hashem says it's beyond your pay grade, and it's not something that I'm prepared to answer, and shows the demonstration of his power by disappearing in a whirlwind. So what I'm saying is, it's unanswered. It's Hashem always hides his ways. Ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I'm not sure why there's a contradiction here, but you're right. I mean, Hashem doesn't reveal to us all of his ways, but there are certain things that Hashem does reveal to us and certain things that he doesn't. One of the things that Hashem tells us is that we have to be very careful when we do achieve some form of wealth or acquisition, that we have to be very careful not to fall into the easy trap of thinking in some way that we ourselves were the ones who manufactured this wealth or produced this wealth, that it's really coming from.
However, we could lose it anyway, but you can still lose it.
That's for sure.
Right.
That's for sure.
I think some people, myself included, have a tendency to make it simplistic. That if your mitzvahs add up, then it sort of indemnifies you from that's not how it works.
No, that's not how it works.
No.
Okay. I just want to say that we saw in the Parsha, we just saw it in the Parsha last week that we just read, that Yaakov, after he has this internal struggle with that angel, that malach, that whatever that was, maybe it was the force of Esav, or some say it was an internal struggle that he was having with his own negative forces inside of him. Either way, it says right afterwards, it says that after that struggle, it says he went and ulamikneu asa sukkos, and for his cattle, for his livestock, he made sukkos. He built Sukkot, and therefore they called the name of the place that he went to Sukkot. So the idea over here is, the simple meaning is obviously that he built pens for his livestock. But there's a deeper idea over here. The deeper idea over here is that Yaakov all of a sudden finds himself to be a very, very wealthy person. He was a yeshiva book. He was an Ish Tam Yoshev Ohalim. The Torah describes him as a simple man who sat in the tents of Torah. He dwelled in the tents of Torah. He learned Torah. He was a simple man. And all of a sudden, after his dealings with Lavan, he's now suddenly very, very wealthy. He's become extremely wealthy overnight. Hold on one second. I just have to call it. All of a sudden, he finds himself incredibly wealthy. So that's a challenge to be like an overnight success. So what does he do? He needs to figure out what to do. Ulamiknehu, which is usually translated as "and for his livestock," can also be translated as and for his acquisitions, for his wealth, meaning for this new problem that he had, this new challenge that he had of how to deal with being very, very wealthy all of a sudden. He came up with a solution, Asa Sukkos. He built sukkahs. He built the sukkah. So what does this mean? And this, by the way, very important principle. When you learn all of the book of Genesis, the Ramban Nachmanides tells us there's a concept called Maisa Ava Siman Labanim, that whatever the patriarchs and matriarchs were doing in their lives were just sort of foreshadowing of what the future of the Jewish people would look like, and it would gradually unfold throughout Jewish history. So when it says that Yaakov built a sukkah, it's not just telling us that Jacob solved his own problem of wealth and fortune by building a sukkah. What he's telling us is that when he built a sukkah, he was creating a solution or a safeguard for the issue and the problem, the challenge of wealth for all of the Jewish people, for all the generations. And that's the sukkah. That's our sukkah that we dwell in during Sukkot. That's the ultimate mechanism to make sure that we don't get haughty. Because why? Because no matter how big and beautiful and fancy your house is, for 1 week you move out of that house and you go outside and you live under the elements and you live in a temporary dwelling place and you're there and it's cold and it's raining and it's night and it's dark and there are animals or whatever, and you have to live with that. And you have to live with that bitachon, with that trust in Hashem, that Hashem's going to take care of you and Hashem's going to provide for you. It's going to be okay. And you're going to wake up in the morning. And that even though you have this big fancy house, it's just an illusion. It's just a false sense of security. And the reality is that we live under Hashem's protection all the time. And I live that way for a week and I internalize that for a week. And then what am I able to do? I'm able to go back into my home with a new perspective that I carry with me for the rest of the year. That really Hashem runs the world and I'm not in control, and this is a temporary dwelling place. So Yaakov did that. And for this challenge that he had of how not to allow his wealth to cause him to forget Hashem, he came up with a solution for himself and for all of his future generations. And that's the sukkah. So that's just an important idea over here. So wealth is absolutely a test. If your goal in life is to be comfortable and to have an easy life and to stay in the comfort zone your whole life, then wealth does not present much of challenge or a test of any sort. But if your goal in life is growth and God connection and humility and bitachon, trusting in Hashem, putting my trust in Hashem, then in fact, great wealth can actually be a very big challenge. How do you have bitachon? How do you develop your sense of trust in Hashem, relying upon Hashem, placing your lot in Hashem's hands when you've got $10 million sitting in the bank? No offense, Hashem, but I'm good. I'm covered. I got this. I'm fine. Got enough money to last me the rest of my life. I don't really need much from you anymore, Hashem. Right? So the challenge for a person who has wealth is, how do I still maintain bitachon? When a person is living hand to mouth, you better believe they have bitachon. They trust Hashem's going to take care of them and provide for them every day. But if you have everything you could ever possibly need for the rest of your life and beyond, how do you develop bitachon? How do you rely on Hashem? How do you build that trust in Hashem? So that's a big challenge. I want to make one more point. And then we'll stop. And then we'll take a few questions, because it's right along. It's too much connected to what we're saying to stop here. So, and then he says, so you have this challenge of poverty and wealth. Okay, and then on the bottom of the page, he says, similarly, there is tranquility on one side and suffering on the other side. He's saying that tranquility and suffering are both life challenges. Okay, so again, the same question. I certainly understand how suffering is a test in life. How am I going to respond to the suffering, to the adversity, to the challenge? If I have, God forbid, an illness, or if there's a death of a loved one, or there's a divorce, or there's a tragedy, there's a trauma in my life, how am I going to respond? Is it going to break me? Is it going to build me into a stronger person? I don't need any explanation whatsoever to show me how that's a test. But the question is tranquility. And I'll make this last point, and then we'll take some questions. But how is tranquility a test? How is having no tranquility what is tranquility? It's having no tragedy, no trauma, and no adversity. So who wouldn't want that? If I gave you an option, hey, you know what? You want a life where there's no trauma, no tragedy, no adversity whatsoever. I mean, I think a lot of people, including myself, would grab that, right? So again, what it comes down to is, what's our goal in life? If our goal in life is comfort, ease, cruise control, then you're right. Then tranquility doesn't provide much of a test. Tranquility is going to allow me to achieve that goal. But if my goal in life is growth, development, self-development, humility, bitachon, building my trust in Hashem, then tranquility becomes a very, very big challenge. Because how do I grow and develop and self-actualize when I don't have the adversity pushing against me? Right? You can't build muscles in the gym unless you're lifting heavy weights. So without a nisyonos are those challenges and tests that convert my potential into self-actualization, those life challenges, those trials and tribulations. Without those, how does it happen? How do I end up growing? How do I end up developing and self-actualizing? Right? So if the growth-oriented person who wants to grow and wants to be self-actualized, absence of all challenge and tension and friction can actually stop me from being able to grow and self-actualize. So this tranquility, having a life where everything's perfect and everything's an easy ride and you have no difficulty and there's no adversity, it can lead to laziness, it can lead to complacency, it can lead to a person feeling that they don't have any need to push themselves, there's nothing to overcome. So in actuality, shalva, this tranquility that the Ramchal is talking about, is perhaps the biggest, the single greatest challenge for someone who's dedicating their life to growth and self-actualization. How do I continue to grow and self-actualize when everything is perfect in my life? I have plenty of money to live on for the rest of my life. I have good health. I have shalom bias. Everything's good. So what do? Do I allow it to make me complacent, to take away my drive, or I'm going to stop growing? I'm just going to coast and retire from life? Or can I somehow still find a way to push myself to greater heights? Can I recognize that somehow Hashem has taken away from me most of the stress and most of the anxiety and most of the challenges that other people have? There must be, like Les was saying in the beginning, something he expects from me. What is that he's expecting from me? What is it that he's looking for me to contribute? How can I challenge myself to push myself harder in that situation when there's nothing forcing me? Okay, so that is the challenge or the test, I would say, of tranquility. So
David,
yes.
I don't think it has to be either or. I think in order to be able to grow and do all the things and get closer to Hashem, it would be much easier to do that from a place of tranquility than from a place of turmoil. So work hard, do what you have to do, get to the tranquility, and then flip the switch and go for closest to Hashem. I mean, I look at myself and there's a certain amount of that
That's a
in
good game
my
plan.
life.
That's a good game plan, but then the challenges with that. I mean, the challenges with that are, how do you know when you get to that place of tranquility? How do you know that you're going to go ahead and push yourself? And that it becomes hard, and you don't have to. When there's nothing compelling you to get out of bed, when there's nothing forcing you, can you find the strength to do it anyway because you want to keep growing? That's where the challenge is. But you're right. I mean, certainly having that tranquility can, if anything, it holds you more accountable for being able to really heighten your connection to Hashem, because there's nothing really stopping you at that point. Yeah, Marilyn, yes.
Yeah, so I want to deal with that question. How do we grow? How do we self-actualize? Now, you said in the beginning of the class that, this has been going on forever and always. How do we get to whatever it is, our goal in life? And there must be some clever people who've written how-to books. For example, if you're too fat and people say go on diet, they don't just say go on diet. There's a million diet books. There's all tricks and whatever. And there must be books that also help you take the first little steps. And in my opinion, all of us probably are lucky enough to have enough. We do have enough wealth. We do have tranquility. We have. And that shows that we're on, let's call it the next step up, because if you have poverty, if you have those things, you have something to push against, to push you on to get your bitachon or whatever it is you want to go. Whereas if you have a tranquil life, so you've got to find something else to push you to carry on, and just not to just sit back and just say, well, thank you, I'm great, thank you very much. I want to know, what are some of those books, or where do you look to take the first teeny tiny step?
It's a good question. Maybe we should write that book.
Whatever. But there must be. It's impossible that there's not something on that. There's always.
Yeah, there are.
But it's Anna. I always look within myself to improve myself, because I've been retired for I don't know how many years, and I'm constantly looking for things to do. So like now I'm having an event here in Arizona for Stand With Us. And it's really been occupying me, because we're doing and I did it with the L'Chaim Center. So I don't know, the books are very good and I cannot answer to that. But I have found over the years that the best place to find what I'm looking for is within myself. I don't know if that makes sense to everybody, but that's what I do. I look within myself.
Definitely makes sense.
And the
No
other
doubt.
thing is, you know what's really helping me?
Hey, Bruce.
You know, it may sound a little weird, but every morning when I wake up, and
Go ahead, honey, yeah.
what?
Am I the only one who's having trouble hearing? Is people coming out? Is
It
just
could be
me?
louder. It could
Okay,
be
maybe it's
louder.
because, I think maybe it's because I'm in Arizona, I'm farther away from you all. But anyway, I'm kidding. No, but like I love reading quotes and I love reading, you know, I do read, but quotes, like one sentence quotes, you know, and that really helps me because I identify with it. So I don't know if that helps anybody, but that's what I like to do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay.
David?
Les, hand up. Yeah.
Oh,
A thought.
I don't think that tranquility is that big a obstacle. I mean, everybody has got challenges unless they disregard the challenges and just don't find them motivating. I just don't know anybody who doesn't have challenges in their, in their life. And if they do, what did Yaakov say? I mean, he really had a very tumultuous life, but the point was in the world to come, Hashem said, this is nothing. In the world to come, you'll have as much tranquility as you want. That's the first thing. And the second thing is when the student is ready, the teacher appears. If you're ready to take on challenges and you're ready to find meaning in your life and you look at the test, the teacher will appear because the world is full of it. I mean, Hashem made it imperfect and it's there to repair. So I don't think it takes that much creativity once you're open. Once you open up that door and let Hashem know that you're ready to be a co-creator, he'll show you.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. That's a great point. Very good point. Lester.
A thought struck me that ties into something that you taught us before, and that is the dynamic between the soul and the body. That when you talk about challenges, the challenges that come from the body are constructed to be more urgent, more visceral, more binary, more compelling. And the secret, or not the secret, but the response is that the objectives are there if we give voice to the higher part of who we are, the soul. But that's the basic objective that we have in all the trials in life. Just to summarize, what I'm saying is it's easy to give priority to the body because the urges, the compelling nature of the demands of the body are more dramatic, they're more visceral. And so that simply teaches that we have to train ourselves to be more sensitive to the softer voices, which really reflect the soul rather than the body.
Wow. Beautiful. Guys, I'm having a big problem with my internet. It's coming in and out and I'm not hearing very much. Okay, let's keep trying. Is there anyone else that wants to make a comment, or maybe we'll wrap it up and we'll see you all later in the week.
Happy travels. We'll
Okay.
not be in Arizona.
Yeah.
Happy travels.
Okay. All right. Have a great night. Have a great day, everybody. Be well. See you soon. See you later in the week. Can't wait.
See you in a few days.
Who told everyone?
Yay. Fabulous.
Good job, David.
Bye,
Very good.
everyone. Thank you,
Great
Rabbi.
class.
Bye, everybody.